Okay, what if you could structure, well, all of human thought? Seriously, imagine a single framework that could organize literally any idea, any argument, any process, and by doing that, just completely get rid of misunderstandings. I know, it sounds a little like science fiction, right? But for one man, Peter Hollitzer, this was his life's mission. So let's dive into this incredible story of a visionary, his absolutely massive idea, and its, let's just say, complicated journey out here in the real world.
So this quote, this is from his obituary. This is how Peter Hollitzer was remembered when he passed away, not just as some thinker, but as the creator of his own personal utopia. Just think about that for a second. That one word, utopia, it just perfectly captures the sheer scale of his ambition, right? And the passion that drove him for decades. His life's work, it wasn't just some abstract theory. To him, it was a blueprint for a better, clearer world.
So Hollitzer was basically consumed by this one single quest to build a framework that could structure any thought, cut down on conflict, and unify all information. And he gave it a name, the Universalschema. All right, so the big question is, how did this grand idea actually work? You know, Hollitzer always insisted its real power was in its simplicity. He boiled it all down to just 4 key pillars. And understanding these is absolutely crucial before we get to the really interesting part. What happened when his idea met the messy real world? So let's break them down. Okay, so at its core, the Universalschema is really just a tool for clarity. The goal is super simple. Create a shared language. You know, just imagine a debate where everyone is arguing from totally different perspectives, but they don't even realize it. We've all been there, right? Well, Hollitzer's schema was designed to solve exactly that problem, to make sure everyone's on the same page by giving them a common structure for any discussion. And believe it or not, the entire system rests on just 2 steps. That's it. First, you segment any piece of information, which is just a fancy way of saying you break it down into its most basic parts. And second, you assign each of those little parts to one of 4 universal pillars, or as Hollitzer liked to call them, aspects. Okay, this is where the idea really clicks. Let's take something super simple, like a car. So the car itself, that's the structure. Driving the car, that's the action, right? So that's the process. Its function is to transport people. That's the whole point, the why. And then the framework, well, that's the stuff that needs to be in place to make it all work, like the fact that fuel is available. See how that works? Hollitzer believed these 4 pillars, structure, process, function, and framework, were so fundamental you could use them to describe and debate, well, anything with total clarity. Now, an idea this big, it needs a home, right? It needs a community to actually adopt it and run with it. And back in 2012, Peter Hollitzer thought he might have found one. But it was in a pretty unlikely place. A newcomers meeting for the Berlin Pirate Party, a political movement that was famous for its chaotic, grassroots energy. And this quote, it's from a blogger who was there that exact same night, and it just perfectly captures the atmosphere. I feel like an intruder. Think about that. This wasn't some formal, welcoming place. It was a tight-knit group, and if you were an outsider with a radical new idea, well, breaking in was gonna be tough. And the place itself, the Kinski Club in Berlin, was apparently gritty, super informal, kinda edgy. The blogger described it as being somewhere between a rock cellar and a demolition house. So, you know, the absolute opposite of the highly structured, perfectly logical system Hollitzer was about to pitch. The stage was definitely set for a fascinating clash of cultures. So according to this blogger, when Hollitzer starts explaining his schema to the other newcomers, his passion just completely takes over. He wasn't really having a conversation, he was delivering a monologue. And this really complex idea, one that needed a careful step-by-step explanation, just kind of washed over his small audience. He was so deep inside his own utopia that it was just really hard for anyone else to get in there with him. And this brings us right to the heart of the story's central conflict. What happens when a perfectly ordered, logical system smacks right into the messy, chaotic, and deeply human world of politics? So the perfect system had been presented, at least in Hollitzer's mind. But you have to wonder, how would a political party that was built on principles of decentralization and total individual freedom, how would they react to an idea that proposed a universal structure for, well, for everything? Well, Hollitzer went ahead and formalized his idea. He created a proposal called the Berliner Delphi, and the goal was to bring expert knowledge and clarity to the party's political initiatives. Sounds good, right? But the reaction on the party's online forum was brutal. Just absolutely brutal. Members saw it as an abuse of party structures. They called it a lobby group. They flat out rejected the idea of letting so-called experts do their thinking for them. The utopia had just crashed, headfirst into a wall of pure skepticism.
So, after facing that kind of fierce resistance, what happens to an idea like this? What's the legacy of a utopia that never quite found a place to land?
This timeline really puts his journey into perspective. It all kicks off with the hope of his book back in 2011. Then comes that really difficult test with the Pirate Party in 2012. And through all of it, you can see he just kept working on it, kept refining his life's work, right up until he passed away in 2025.
But here's the thing. That rejection didn't stop him. Not at all. And this is maybe the most telling part of his entire story. He spent the next decade, more than a decade, refining his theory, building a web app, and giving talks to literally anyone who would listen. He was just driven by this unwavering belief that his schema was truly, truly universal.
Which leaves us with one last kind of thought-provoking question. Peter Hollitzer's utopia, it never really found a mainstream home. His schema didn't revolutionize political discourse or anything like that. But does that mean it failed? Or does the value of a grand, idealistic vision like this lie somewhere else entirely? It's definitely something to think about.